Day sat alone in the observation deck, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The neutron star outside cast strange shadows through the reinforced windows, light bending in ways that still amazed him after 2 years on Station Meridian 7. He was checking the reality anchor readings when every alarm in the station went. Silent at once. Not offline. Silent, as if someone had reached into the universe and pressed mute. His heart hammered in his chest. Day spun around, reaching for the emergency comm, but his hand froze halfway. The air in front of him was wrong. It rippled like water, except there was no water, no substance at all. Just wrongness, a space where reality seemed unsure of itself. Then she stepped through. Day had seen many aliens in his career. The insectoid craft with their compound eyes. The gaseous Velen who lived in containment suits. The massive Gordoth who barely fit through standard doorways. But this being was something else entirely. She seemed to be made of silver light, wrapped in the suggestion of a female form. Her edges, blurred and refocused constantly, as if his eyes couldn't quite decide what they were looking at. Come with me, human. The words didn't come through his ears. They appeared directly in his mind, calm and clear, carrying an urgency that made his stomach clench. Bay's training kicked in. 7 years of protocol, safety procedures, and first contact guidelines. I need to alert station security. Identify yourself and state your. There is no time for procedures. Her voice, or whatever it was, cut through his thoughts gently but firmly. What I must show, you cannot wait for committees and permissions. Come with me now, or what your kind has done will destroy more than you can imagine. His hand hovered over the alarm. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to press it, but something in her tone stopped him. It wasn't threatening. It was desperate in a way that beings of light probably shouldn't be capable of feeling. What do you mean? What my kind has done? Day asked. She moved closer, and he realized she wasn't walking. She simply existed in different positions, transitioning between them without the space between. Your species has touched something ancient, something sealed away for reasons your civilizations have not yet learned to understand. One of your people has taken what should never be taken. That's impossible. Humans don't have access to anything that old. We've only been in space for 300 years. Impossibility, she said, and Day could have sworn he heard sadness in the word, is what your species excels at achieving. The door to the observation deck hissed open. Jiho, his friend and fellow engineer, rushed in with a plasma cutter in his hands. Day, get away from it. I saw the sensor readings go crazy. Wait. Day held up his hand. She hasn't hurt me. She's trying to tell me something. It's probably scrambling your brain right now. We don't know what it is. Jiho kept the cutter pointed at the silver being, his hands shaking slightly. The being regarded Jiho with something that might have been patience. I am Velmara of the Ethereal Collective. We exist in the spaces between your dimensions. We watch. We guard. And now, we ask for help, because one of you has done what we thought impossible. Why him? Jiho gestured at Day with the cutter. Why not contact the Council? The Earth government? Why grab a random engineer? He is not random. 3 weeks ago, Day witnessed an anomaly in the reality anchor readings. A fluctuation that lasted 0.03 seconds. He reported it, and his superiors dismissed it as equipment malfunction. Velnara's form pulsed softly. But it was not a malfunction. It was a human breaking through barriers that have stood for 11 million years. And Day's mind understood, even if his conscious thoughts did not. His brain noticed what others could not. This makes him necessary. Day remembered that day. The readings had spiked in a pattern that made no sense, like someone had reached into the fabric of space and plucked it like a guitar string. He had stared at those numbers for hours, convinced they meant something important. But Chief Engineer Suk had laughed it off, blamed a faulty sensor, and told him to stop seeing patterns in random noise. You're saying someone broke through? What? A seal? A barrier? A lock, Velmara said. One that required understanding of mathematics that exists outside your dimension. One that humans should not have been able to comprehend, let alone manipulate, but one of yours did. And now, pieces of something terrible are loose in your reality. Jiho lowered the cutter slightly. This is insane. Day, you can't seriously be considering going with this thing. Day looked at his friend, then at the being of light, then out at the neutron star spinning in the darkness. His whole life, he had been the person who followed rules, who checked and double-checked, who colored inside the lines, because that was how you stayed safe in the vast emptiness of space. But he had also spent his whole life wondering what else was out there, what mysteries waited beyond the edges of human knowledge. And now something impossible was standing in front of him, asking him to step into the unknown. If I don't come, back in 24 hours, they said slowly, alert the council. Tell them everything. Record this conversation. They know, but if I do come back, it means we might be able to stop whatever this is before it gets worse. He met Jiho's eyes. You'd do the same thing. Jiho stared at him for a long moment, then cursed in Korean and activated his wrist recorder. You better come back. We're supposed to watch the Starball finals next week. Day managed a weak smile. I'll try. He turned to Velmara. Okay, I'll come with you. But you need to explain everything once we get to wherever we're going. Agreed. Velmara extended something that might have been a hand. It looked like concentrated starlight held in the shape of fingers. This will feel strange. Do not be afraid. Your mind is stronger than you know. Day reached out. His fingers touched hers, and the universe folded. It wasn't teleportation like in the science fiction shows. It was worse and better and completely indescribable. He felt himself stretch across dimensions he couldn't name, felt his consciousness exist in multiple states simultaneously. Colors that had no names flashed through his perception. Sounds that predated the concept of hearing echoed through his bones. Then, suddenly, he was standing on solid ground again. Except the ground was translucent, and beneath it he could see nothing. Not darkness, not space. Just nothing, the complete absence of anything that could be seen. And in front of him rose ruins that shouldn't exist, built with geometry that hurt to look at, ancient beyond ancient, beautiful and terrifying. Welcome, Velmara said beside him, her voice almost gentle, to the Threshold Archive. Where your kind has committed either the greatest theft in galactic history or the beginning of something none of us can yet comprehend. A's legs felt weak, but he stayed standing because that was what humans did. They stood in the face of the impossible and asked questions. Now, he said, his voice surprisingly steady, tell me everything. The archive stretched in every direction that shouldn't exist. Dai's engineer brain tried to make sense of the architecture, but it kept failing. Towers spiraled upward and inward simultaneously. Bridges connected to themselves without forming loops. And the material, if it could be called material, shifted between solid and transparent with each heartbeat. Don't try too hard to understand it, a voice said from behind him, a human voice. You'll give yourself a migraine that lasts for days. Day spun around. A woman stood there, maybe in her early 30s, wearing a tattered Earth Federation research uniform. Her black hair was longer than regulation allowed, tied back in a messy braid, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. They had faint geometric patterns glowing beneath the iris, symbols that rotated slowly like some kind of internal display. Who are you? Day asked. Kira. I disappeared from Research Station O'Hara 3 years ago. At least, that's how long it's been out there. For me, it's been closer to 9 years. Time works differently when you're standing between dimensions. She walked toward him, her steps confident, despite the transparent floor. You must be the poor soul Velmara dragged here to help clean up the mess. You know her? We've been working together since I arrived, or was brought. The distinction gets fuzzy. Kira stopped a few feet away and studied him. Let me guess. She showed up, said something cryptic, and you came along because you're either brave or stupid. Curious, Day said. I came because I'm curious. Kira laughed, but it sounded tired. Yeah, that'll do it. Curiosity is the human trait that gets us in the most trouble. Also the one that's about to save the universe, so I guess it balances out. Velara's form shimmered into existence beside them. Kira has learned much in her time here. She will explain what I cannot. The ending code is beyond my ability to describe in ways your linear minds can process. The ending code? They felt his stomach drop. That sounds bad. It's worse than bad. Kira gestured for him to follow and started walking toward the nearest structure. Come on, I'll show you. They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of frozen light. Velmara drifted beside them, silent now, letting Kira take the lead. The human woman moved with the ease of someone who had spent years in this impossible place, no longer disturbed by its wrongness. The precursors built this archive 11 million years ago, Kira began. They were the first civilization to achieve true dimensional transcendence. They discovered something fundamental about reality, something so dangerous that they locked it away here, in a place specifically designed to exist outside normal spacetime. What did they discover? Mathematics, but not the kind you or I learned in school. This is math that describes the underlying code of reality itself, the actual numbers and equations that make the universe run. Kira stopped at a massive door covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. They called it the ending code because if you use it wrong, you can literally end things. Unmake them from existence. Not destroy them. Erase them from ever having existed. They felt his mouth go dry. That's not possible. You're standing in a place between dimensions after being brought here by a being made of light, and you're telling me what's not possible? Kira raised an eyebrow, but her expression was kind. Reality's a lot more flexible than we thought. And humans, it turns out, are really good at bending it. She touched the door, and it opened without a sound. Inside was a chamber that made Day's eyes water. The walls were covered in equations, but they moved and shifted, rearranging themselves in patterns that his brain insisted should be meaningful, but couldn't quite grasp. This was the main vault, Kira said quietly, where the precursors kept the complete ending code. Notice anything missing? Day looked around the chamber. There were empty spaces on the walls, gaps in the equation patterns like missing teeth in a smile. Pieces are gone. 17 pieces, to be exact. Stolen 3 weeks ago by a human who figured out how to bypass locks that had held for millions of years. Kira's voice was heavy with worry. The ethereal collective immediately noticed the breach. They've been guarding this place since the precursors vanished. But by the time they responded, the thief was gone. How is that even possible? How could a human get here in the first place? Velmara spoke up. That is the question that troubles my people most. Humans operate on a dimensional frequency incompatible with this place. Your thoughts, your consciousness, exist in a state too rigid, too bound to linear time. Coming here should have torn his mind apart. But it didn't, Kira said. And that's because of something unique about human cognition. We can hold contradictory thoughts in our heads at the same time. We can believe two opposite things and not go insane. It's called cognitive dissonance, and every species in the galaxy thinks it's a weakness. Is it? Day asked. No, it's a superpower. Kira tapped her temple. where the geometric patterns glowed a little brighter. The ending code is built on paradoxes, equations that are simultaneously true and false, states of existence that are both real and unreal. A normal mind would break trying to process it. But human minds? We're already used to holding paradoxes. We do it every day without thinking about it. Day thought about that. He remembered learning about quantum mechanics, about particles that existed in multiple states until observed, about mathematics that only worked if you accepted impossible premises. He remembered the headaches, sure, but also the strange thrill of understanding something that shouldn't make sense. So this thief, this human, they were able to interact with the ending code because their brain could handle the paradoxes. Exactly. And that makes humanity both uniquely dangerous and uniquely necessary. Kira walked to one of the empty spaces on the wall. The ethereal collective wanted to erase all knowledge of this place from Earth's databases. Make sure no human ever found it again. But I convinced them that would be a mistake. Why? Because the thief isn't done. 17 pieces sounds like a lot, but it's not enough to actually use the ending code. You need at least 30 pieces to create what's called a paradox engine, a device that can implement the code in real space. He's going to come back for more, or he's going to try to find another source. Day felt cold despite the strange warmth of the archive. Who is he? Do you know? Kira and Velmara exchanged a look. The being of light pulsed in a pattern that might have been reluctance. His name is Taiwan, Kira said finally. He's a mathematician from the Institute of Abstract, Mathematics on New Soul Colony. Brilliant, obsessed, and desperate. Desperate for what? His daughter is dying. Kira's voice softened. Cascade sickness. Her quantum state is becoming untethered from baseline reality. She phases in and out of existence, experiencing subjective centuries in seconds. There's no cure, no treatment. The best doctors in the galaxy have tried everything. And he thinks the ending code can save her. He knows it can. If you can manipulate the underlying mathematics of reality, you can rewrite the universal constants that make her illness possible. You can literally change the rules so that cascade sickness never existed. Kira looked at the empty spaces on the wall. He's not evil. He's just a father who can't accept losing his daughter. Day understood that motivation immediately. He had a niece back on Earth, little Hai-Jin with her bright smile and endless questions about space. If she were dying, if there was even the smallest chance to save her, would he hesitate to do anything necessary? But if he succeeds, then reality becomes unstable, Velmara said. The ending code is not meant for targeted changes. It is all or nothing. If Taiwan implements it to save his daughter, he will create cascading paradoxes throughout the universe. Stars may cease fusion. Planets may forget they orbit suns. Consciousness itself may become impossible. All existence unwound because one man could not let go. We have to stop him, they said. We have to find him first. And that's where you come in. Kira pulled out a small device that looked like a cross between a scanner and a compass. The pieces he stole leave traces. Dimensional signatures that only certain minds can track. Minds that can hold the same paradoxes the code contains. You want me to track him using my ability to think in contradictions. Not just you. Me too. And we'll need others. Humans who can do what should be impossible. Kira handed him the device. Velmara can take us back to your station. From there, we start the hunt. We find Taiwan before he builds his paradox engine. And somehow, we convince a desperate father to let his daughter go. Day took the device, feeling its strange weight. It was warm and cold at the same time, another small paradox to add to the growing list. And if we can't convince him? Kira met his eyes, and in her gaze, he saw years of hard decisions and harder truths. Then we stop him by force. Because the universe is full of tragedy, but we can't let one tragedy end everything. Day nodded slowly. He had come here for answers. Now he had a mission. And despite the fear coiling in his gut, despite the impossibility of everything he was being asked to do, he felt something else to dot purpose. The sense that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what only he could do. Okay, he said. Let's go hunting. The transition back to normal space was easier the second time, though Day still felt like his consciousness had been stretched and folded like taffy. He and Kira materialized in his quarters on Station Meridian 7, with Valmara appearing a moment later in her typical shimmer of silver light. Jiho burst through the door 3 seconds after their arrival. Plasma cutter raised, then stopped dead when he saw not just Day, but 2 others with him. You're back. And you brought friends. Jiho lowered the cutter slowly, staring at Kira in her glowing eyes. Should I be concerned? Extremely, Day said, managing a tired smile. But we need your help anyway. We need to contact someone in military intelligence without triggering any official channels. You're asking me to help you do something illegal. I'm asking you to help me save the universe. The illegal part is just a bonus. Jiho looked at him for a long moment, then sighed and pulled out his personal communicator. I hate that I believe you. My cousin works in fleet intelligence. She owes me a favor. What do you need? Information on a mathematician named Taiwan from New Seoul Colony, and access to someone who can move fast without bureaucracy getting in the way. 10 minutes later, they were on a secure channel with a woman whose sharp eyes and military bearing made Day sit up straighter despite himself. Her uniform bore the insignia of a commander, and her expression suggested she had very little patience for nonsense. I'm Commander Yuna. Jiho's message said this was urgent and classified. Start talking, and this better be worth my time. Kira leaned forward into the hologram's view. 3 years ago, I was Dr. Kira An, research specialist who disappeared from Station O'Hara. I've been living in a dimensional space between universes, studying ancient technology that could destroy reality itself. A human mathematician has stolen pieces of that technology. We need to find him before he uses it. Yuna stared at her, then at Day, then back at Kira. You're serious, completely. Prove it. Kira's eyes flared, the geometric patterns becoming visible even through the hologram. She spoke a single word in a language that made Day's teeth ache, and the air in his quarters folded briefly, creating a pocket of space that shouldn't exist. Inside it, they could see the archive, the impossible architecture, proof that Kira wasn't lying. The pocket collapsed, and Yuna was already typing commands into her terminal. Taiwan Choi, age 42, professor of abstract mathematics at New Seoul Institute. Daughter Nari, age 9, suffering from cascade sickness. Wife deceased 5 years ago. He took a leave of absence 3 weeks ago and hasn't been seen since. She looked up. You're telling me he stole reality-breaking mathematics to save his daughter? Yes, Valmara said, her voice making Yuna flinch at its sudden appearance in her mind. And if he succeeds in using it, the cascade will destroy far more than one child's life. Yuna was quiet for a moment, her jaw tight. My first instinct is to bury this. If the Galactic Council finds out a human has stolen ancient superweapons, the political fallout will be catastrophic. Earth has enemies who would use this as an excuse to restrict or eliminate us. That's exactly why we can't hide it, they said. If we cover this up and it goes wrong, we prove every species that fears humanity right. But if we handle it ourselves, publicly, with honor, we show them who we really are. Eunice studied him through the hologram. You sound very confident for an engineer who was doing maintenance 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago, I thought the universe made sense. Now I know better. Now I know humans have a responsibility to clean up human problems, even the impossible ones. A ghost of a smile crossed Yuna's face. All right, I'm in. But we do this my way. I'm assembling a team, and you're all coming with me. If we're going to hunt down a desperate genius with reality-warping math, we're going to do it properly. 2 days later, Day found himself on a military corvette heading toward the outer reaches, surrounded by people who were taking this much more seriously than he'd expected. Yuna's team included tactical specialists, dimension scanners, and a quiet man named Juan who had worked with Taiwan at the Institute. Juan sat across from Day in the briefing room, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, his eyes distant. Taiwan was my friend. We published papers together, argued about proof methods over drinks. I went to his daughter's birthday parties. You don't have to come with us, Day said gently. Yes, I do, because I understand how he thinks. I know how his mind works when he's solving problems. Juan looked up, and there was pain in his expression. He's not evil. He's just broken. Nari was the only thing keeping him going after his wife died. Watching her suffer, knowing every day could be her last, it destroyed something in him. How would he use the ending code? Kira asked. She sat at the head of the table, her glowing eyes drawing nervous glances from the military personnel. He'd approach it like a proof. Build a logical framework first, then fill in the pieces. He'd need a paradox engine to implement the code, which means he'd need specific materials. Quantum processors rated for impossible calculations. Reality anchors to stabilize the workspace. And a power source capable of feeding paradoxical energy states. Juan pulled up a star chart. There are only a few places in civilized space where he could acquire all of that. The mining colony on Titan's Edge, Yuna said immediately. They have quantum processing facilities and a black market that doesn't ask questions. That's where we start. Then, Kira touched the device she'd given Day, which now sat on the table between them. It was glowing faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that suggested it was detecting something. The traces are getting stronger. He's been there recently. The Corvette dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 hours later, and Titan's Edge grew in the view screen. It was a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a processing facility, its surface covered in domes and mining equipment. Thousands of workers lived there, along with the usual collection of criminals, smugglers, and people running from something. They docked at the public port, and Yuna split them into teams. She and her tactical specialists would search the official markets. Day, Kira, and Juan would check the black market. Velmara would remain on the ship, too conspicuous for this kind of work. The black market was exactly what they expected. Dim lighting, suspicious vendors, and the kind of atmosphere that suggested people here had more important things to worry about than safety regulations. Kira led them through the maze of stalls with confidence, her glowing eyes making people step aside nervously. There, Juan said, pointing to a vendor selling quantum processors. Those are Institute models. Military grade. He was here. The vendor, a scarred woman with augmented eyes, glanced at them. You law? Because if you're law, I'm closed. We're not law, Kira said. We're looking for someone. A human man, early 40s, probably nervous, buying high-end quantum equipment about a week ago. You remember him? The vendor studied them, then shrugged. Maybe. Memory's expensive. Yuna appeared from the shadows, her military bearing making the vendor tense. She placed a credit chip on the counter. Here's your memory enhancement. Talk. Yeah, I remember him. Desperate type. Bought 3 quantum processors, a portable reality anchor, and asked about power sources. I pointed him toward the deep market, where the really illegal stuff lives. The vendor pocketed the credit chip. He was crying. Not sobbing, just tears running down his face while he counted out credits. Whatever he's doing, it's killing him to do it. Juan's expression crumbled for a moment before he controlled it. Did he say where he was going? No, but he asked about abandoned stations, places where nobody would bother him. I told him about the old research platform in the Veil Nebula. It's been derelict for years, but the power core still works. That's 2 days away, Yuna said. Then we leave now. Kira was already moving toward the exit. But as they turned to leave, the device in Day's pocket began screaming in alert. Down! Kira shouted. Day hit the floor as reality itself seemed to hiccup. The air folded, creating pockets of impossible space that swallowed stalls and people alike. Screams echoed through the market as the temporal traps Taiwan had left behind activated, catching anyone searching for him. One of Yuna's soldiers stepped into a fold and aged 70 years in 3 seconds, collapsing as his body forgot how to be young. Another trap created a loop where a vendor lived the same 5 seconds over and over, unable to escape the cycle. He knew we'd come. Juan yelled over the chaos. He set traps. Day's engineer brain kicked into gear. He pulled out his scanner and started analyzing the folds in space. They followed patterns, mathematical sequences that his paradox-trained mind could almost grasp. They're based on recursive loops. If we can identify the anchor points in plain language. Yuna demanded, follow exactly where I step. Day stood and began walking through the chaos, his mind holding 2 truths simultaneously. The traps existed, and they also had safe paths through them. His brain shouldn't have been able to process that contradiction, but thanks to his time in the archive, it could. He led them through the impossible maze, each step calculated, each movement based on understanding paradoxical mathematics that would have driven him insane a week ago. Behind them, the traps continued to spring, but they reached the exit unharmed. Outside, Yuna gathered her team. They had lost 2 soldiers to the traps, and several others were injured. Her expression was grim. He's not going to let us take him peacefully, she said. No, Juan agreed quietly. But maybe we can still talk to him. Make him understand? Kira looked at the device, which was now pointing toward the Veil Nebula. We're running out of time. If he's gathering materials this aggressively, he's close to completing the paradox engine. They boarded the Corvette and set course for the nebula. As they entered faster-than-light travel, Day stared out at the stars and wondered if they were already too late. And if they weren't, what would it take to convince a father to let his daughter die? The Veil Nebula was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Clouds of purple and gold gas swirled around newborn stars, creating patterns that looked like cosmic artwork. Hidden in the heart of the nebula was the research platform, a small station that had been abandoned when funding dried up 10 years ago. As they approached, every sensor on the Corvette started screaming warnings. Space around the platform was wrong. Reality bent and twisted in patterns that hurt to observe. The platform itself phased in and out of normal space, existing in multiple states simultaneously. He's already started, Kira said, her eyes blazing with geometric patterns. The paradox engine is active. Can we even dock? Yuna asked. Velmara materialized on the bridge, her presence making the tactical displays flicker. I can stabilize a path, but only briefly. You will have minutes at most. Then we move fast. Yuna looked at her team. Only 5 soldiers remained combat-ready after the trap injuries. Day, Kira, Juan, you're with me. The rest of you secure the ship and be ready to pull us out. They suited up and crossed through the dimensional bridge Velmara created. The platform's interior was worse than its exterior. Corridors looped back on themselves. Gravity changed direction randomly. And at the center of it all, they could feel the pull of the paradox engine, a wrongness that resonated in their bones. They found Taiwan in what had been the main research lab. The room was now a cathedral to impossible mathematics. Equations covered every surface, written in light and shadow, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves. At the center stood the paradox engine, a structure that seemed to be built from frozen moments of time and space, warped into physical form, and suspended in a field beside it was a young girl, Nari. She was small and fragile, her body flickering between states of existence. Sometimes she appeared solid and normal. Other times she became translucent, her form rippling like water. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed to be sleeping, unaware of the impossible forces swirling around her. Taiwan stood at the engine's control panel, his hands moving across interfaces that existed half in this reality and half in others. He was thin, his face drawn with exhaustion and determination. When he heard them enter, he didn't turn around. "I knew someone would come eventually," he said, his voice hoarse. "I hoped I'd have more time." "Taiwan." Juan stepped forward, his hands spread peacefully. "Please, stop this. We can find another way. There is no other way. I've spent 3 years searching. Every treatment, every experimental procedure, every possible cure. Nothing works. Cascade sickness has no treatment because it's not a disease. It's a fundamental incompatibility between her quantum state and baseline reality." Taiwan finally turned to face them, and they saw the tears streaming down his face. "The universe itself is killing my daughter, so I'm going to change the universe and kill everyone else in the process," Una said, her weapon not quite pointed at him but ready. "The ending code isn't precise. You know this. When you rewrite reality's constants to save her, the cascade will spread. Stars will fail. Worlds will cease to exist. Trillions will die. I don't care." The words were simple and terrible. "She's 9 years old. She likes drawing pictures of stars. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She's my entire world, and I will not let her die." Kira moved closer to the engine, studying its construction. "You've built it well. This is genius-level work, even accounting for the stolen knowledge. But it's not complete. You're missing pieces. I have enough. 31 pieces of the ending code, more than sufficient to target the specific constants affecting quantum state coherence." Taiwan's hand hovered over a control. "I've run the calculations 1,000 times. This will work. It will work to save her," Kira agreed. "But the math doesn't lie, Taiwan. The paradox cascade will spread exponentially. Within hours, entire star systems will experience temporal collapse. Within days, the fabric of space-time in this galaxy will begin unraveling. Within weeks, the damage will be irreversible. Then billions of years of future existence is the price for one life now." Taiwan looked at his daughter, his expression softening for just a moment. "How is that different from any other sacrifice in history? We sacrifice the many for the one all the time. That's what parents do." Juan stepped closer to his friend. "This isn't what she would want. Nari is a kind child. If she knew the cost, she's 9. She doesn't get to make that choice." Taiwan's composure cracked, and anguish filled his voice. "I watched my wife die from a shuttle accident. I held her hand while she faded. I promised her I'd protect our daughter. I promised. And I won't break that promise just because the universe thinks her life is worth less than some arbitrary greater good." They understood then. This wasn't about logic or ethics or philosophy. This was about a man who had already lost everything once and couldn't survive losing it again. You couldn't reason with that kind of desperation, But maybe you could offer an alternative. What if there was another way? Day heard himself say, a way to use the ending code, but contain the cascade. Everyone turned to look at him. Kira's eyes widened slightly, and he saw her mind racing through possibilities. There's no way to contain it, Taiwan said. The code affects fundamental constants. You can't make changes locally. Not normally, Kira said slowly, catching on to what Day was suggesting. But what if the change wasn't implemented directly? What if instead of rewriting reality's code, we ran it through a buffer? A living consciousness that could hold the paradox stable while the code makes surgical changes? That's impossible. No mind could handle. Taiwan stopped. His eyes widened as he realized what they were suggesting. No, absolutely not. A human mind could theoretically do it, but the strain would be catastrophic. It would kill whoever tried. Probably, Kira agreed. But probably isn't definitely. And if it works, Nari lives, the universe survives. And only one person pays the price instead of trillions. I volunteer, Day said immediately. So do I, Juan added. Me too, Yuna said quietly. Velmara's presence grew stronger in the room. This is what my people needed to see. Whether humans would sacrifice themselves for others or prove themselves monsters. You have answered that question. Taiwan stared at them, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Why? Why would any of you do this? You don't even know her. Because it's the right thing to do, Day said. And because humanity needs to prove we're not the threat everyone fears we are. We're the species that finds impossible solutions and pays impossible prices to protect others. Even strangers. Kira was already reconfiguring the engine, her hands moving with practiced precision. We can split the cognitive load between multiple minds. 4 of us sharing the paradox. It increases the chances of survival significantly. 4? Taiwan looked around. You mean, you're coming with us, Juan said firmly. You started this. You see it through to the end. Besides, you know the code better than any of us. We need your expertise. Tears flowed freely down Taiwan's face now. I don't deserve this. Any of this. None of us deserve what we get, Yuna said. We just deal with it as best we can. Now let's save your daughter. They formed a circle around the paradox engine. Velmara created dimensional anchors to stabilize the space, preventing the cascade from spreading prematurely. Kira finished the modifications, creating neural interfaces that would link all 4 human minds together. Once we start, she explained, you'll need to hold 2 contradictory truths simultaneously. Nari is dying, and Nari is healing. The universe is ending, and the universe is eternal. Your minds need to believe both with equal conviction. If anyone breaks, if anyone lets one truth dominate the other, the paradox collapses and the cascade spreads. How long? Day asked. 3 minutes. That's how long the code needs to rewrite the specific quantum constants affecting her. 3 minutes of holding the end of everything in our heads, Juan said. That's not so bad. It's going to feel like eternity, Kira warned. Ready? They put on the neural interfaces. Day felt the connections form, felt his consciousness brush against 3 other minds. He could sense Taiwan's desperate hope, Juan's steady resolve, Yuna's military discipline. Initiating, Kira said. The paradox engine activated fully, and Day's world exploded into contradiction. He was standing in the lab. He was falling through infinite space. He was being born and dying simultaneously. The universe was ending in fire and ice, and the simple cessation of existence. But the universe was also continuing, eternal and unchanging, as it always had been. His mind screamed at the impossibility, but he held firm. He was human. He was built for this. Beside him, he felt the others doing the same, their consciousness supporting his, creating a network of belief that could hold the paradox stable. Inside the field, Nari's body began to stabilize. Her flickering slowed, then stopped. Her quantum state locked into baseline reality as the code rewrote the fundamental constants governing her existence. She was healing, but the price was terrible. Bay felt his sense of self beginning to fragment under the strain. His memories blurred. His understanding of linear time collapsed. He existed in all moments simultaneously, and it was tearing him apart. Then he felt the others. Taiwan's love for his daughter, so strong it could hold back the end of everything. Juan's friendship, refusing to let his friend fall alone. Yuna's duty, her dedication to protecting humanity even from itself. And underneath it all, Kira's knowledge. Her years of study giving them the framework to survive this impossible moment. Together, they held the paradox. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The engine powered down. The paradox collapsed, but not into cascade. It collapsed into resolution. Nari was healed. The universe survived. And 4 humans fell to the floor, their minds scarred but intact. They lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he still understood what reality was. Beside him, the others were doing the same. Nari's eyes opened. She looked around, confused, then saw her father. "Dad? Why are you crying?" Taiwan crawled to her, wrapped his arms around her, and sobbed. And Day, lying on the floor with his mind still rearranging itself into something resembling normal, smiled. They had done it. Done the impossible. Saved 1 life without ending billions. Proved that humanity could hold the weight of paradox and not break. That was enough. 6 months had passed since the Veil Nebula incident, and the galaxy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The Galactic Council chambers on Unity Station were packed. Representatives from 200 species filled the tiered seating, their various forms of existence creating a rainbow of biology and technology. At the center podium stood Velnara, her silver light form carefully controlled to not disturb the biological beings present. Day watched from the human delegation section, sitting beside Ambassador Choi, the same Choi whose daughter he had helped save, though the ambassador position was technically unrelated to those events. Officially unrelated, anyway. The Ethereal Collective has completed its investigation, Velmara announced, her voice translating simultaneously into 200 languages. Regarding the incident involving human interaction with the Threshold Archive and the ending code, we present our findings. The chamber fell silent. This was what everyone had been waiting for. The verdict that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy going forward. Humanity is dangerous, Velmara stated flatly. A ripple of reaction went through the chamber, some species making gestures of agreement, others of concern. They possess cognitive capabilities that allow them to interact with paradoxical mathematics that would shatter other species' minds. They can break seals designed to be unbreakable. They can hold contradictions that should drive them insane. Day felt his stomach tighten. This was sounding like a prelude to restriction, possibly even quarantine. However, Velmara continued, and the single word changed the entire mood. They are also uniquely capable of controlling these abilities. When faced with the choice between saving 1 life and protecting billions, they chose both. When offered power, they chose responsibility. When confronted with the impossible, they found solutions where no solutions should exist. She gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber, showing the incident at the research platform. Every species watched as 4 humans willingly linked their minds to hold a paradox that could have destroyed the universe, doing it to save a single child while protecting all others. The Ethereal Collective has existed for 20 million years, Velmara said. We have watched civilizations rise and fall. We have seen species that conquered through strength, others through cunning, still others through technology. But humanity is the first species we have encountered that excels through compassionate paradox. They are contradictions walking on two legs, capable of great destruction and greater creation. And they consistently choose creation. Another gesture, and the displays changed to show various human achievements. Medical advances shared freely with other species. Rescue operations in hazardous zones where only human cognitive flexibility could navigate the dangers. Diplomatic solutions to conflicts by finding middle grounds other species insisted didn't exist. Therefore, the ethereal collective recommends not restriction, but custodianship. Humanity shall be granted guardianship over the spaces between spaces, the impossible places where only their unique minds can safely tread. They will protect the galaxy from threats that exist in dimensional paradoxes, and in return, they will be granted access to knowledge suitable for such responsibility. The vote took 3 hours. Species debated, argued, expressed concerns and support. But in the end, the motion passed with a solid majority. Humanity was not to be feared or controlled. They were to be trusted with impossible responsibilities. Walking back to his quarters later that evening, they felt the weight of that decision. The custodianship wasn't honorary. It was real work, dangerous work, the kind that would require humans to keep stepping into impossible situations. Because they were the only ones who could, his communicator chimed. A message from Kira. Meet me at the observation deck. There's something you need to see. He found her standing by the massive windows, looking out at Unity Station's view of the galaxy. Her eyes still glowed with geometric patterns, a permanent change from their time holding the paradox. Day's eyes had them too now, though fainter. All 4 of them who had performed the procedure bore the marks. How's the new institute? They asked, joining her at the window. Kira smiled. Busy. We've already got 20 students learning to safely interact with paradoxical mathematics. Taiwan is an excellent teacher when he's not trying to unravel reality. And Nari is showing aptitude that's honestly terrifying. She understands this stuff better than any of us. The next generation, they said. Building on impossible foundations, Kira agreed. Speaking of which, I wanted you to see this. She pulled up a holographic display showing various projects the Institute of Paradox Studies was working on. Medical applications of controlled paradox for treating previously incurable diseases. Engineering solutions using impossible mathematics to solve energy crises. Diplomatic applications using paradox thinking to resolve conflicts. We're not just guarding dangerous knowledge anymore, Kira said. We're learning to use it responsibly. To take what could destroy everything and make it help everyone. That's very human of us, they said with a slight smile. It really is. Kira closed the display and looked at him seriously. Velmara asked me to give you something. An invitation, I guess. To what? Back to the Threshold Archive. There's more there than the ending code. Other knowledge, other secrets that the precursors left behind. The ethereal collective wants human custodians to begin learning what else is hidden in the impossible spaces. And they want you to be one of the first. They thought about that. About stepping back into that place between dimensions. About spending time learning secrets that could break minds less flexible than human ones. It was dangerous, certainly. Possibly deadly. But it was also the most important work he could imagine doing. When do we start? Kira's smile was radiant. Tomorrow. There are 5 others coming too. Yuna, Juan, and 3 new recruits who showed aptitude. We'll be learning together, becoming humanity's first generation of paradox custodians. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, in the impossible spaces between dimensions, ancient knowledge waited. And humans, with their strange ability to believe contradictions, would be the ones to unlock it safely, later that night, Day made his way to the Remembrance Garden, a section of Unity Station dedicated to those lost in service to the galaxy. A new memorial had been erected, a simple stone with names carved on it. The 2 soldiers who died in the temporal traps on Titan's Edge, several others who had fallen in related incidents, and a dedication for those who held the impossible and protected the possible, for the humans who chose sacrifice over safety, for the species that answers, what if? With Let Me Try, Commander Una stood there already, in civilian clothes, her military bearing softened by the evening light. She looked up as day approached. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, too much thinking about tomorrow. He joined her in looking at the memorial. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Taking on these responsibilities?" "Every day," Una admitted. "But then I remember that little girl, Nari. She's alive and healthy, and going to grow up to probably terrify us all with her brilliance. And I remember that we saved her without destroying everything else. That's the balance we need to keep finding. The impossible balance. Well, we're good at impossible." She turned to leave, then paused. "The Council is setting up a permanent custodian division. Military support, diplomatic backing, the whole structure. They want me to lead it." I said yes. "That's good. You'll be excellent at it. You're joining, I hope, as Chief Engineer for Impossible Solutions." Day laughed. "Is that an actual title?" "It is now." Una's expression grew serious. "We're building something new here. A way for humanity to serve the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through our unique abilities. Taking the jobs no one else can do. Solving the problems no one else can solve. Being the ones who step into the impossible and find ways to survive it." "I'm in," Day said without hesitation. They shook hands, sealing the commitment. Tomorrow, the work would begin. But tonight, Day had one more place to visit. The quarters assigned to Taiwan and Nari were in the family section of Unity Station. When Day knocked, the door opened immediately, revealing a room that looked lived in and happy. Drawings covered the walls, mostly of stars and spaceships, all signed by Nari in careful handwriting. Taiwan looked better than he had in months. The desperate edge was gone from his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. "Day, come in." Taiwan gestured him inside. "Nari, we have a guest." The girl looked up from her drawing tablet. She was small and bright-eyed, with her father's intelligence clearly visible in her expression. "Hi, are you one of Dad's friends who did the impossible thing?" "I helped a little," Day said, kneeling down to her level. "How are you feeling?" "Really good. The doctors say I'm completely stable now. No more flickering." She held up her drawing. "I'm making a picture of the Threshold Archive. Dad described it to me. It sounds so cool." "It is cool. And a little scary. But mostly amazing." Nari nodded seriously. "I want to go there someday. Is that okay?" Day glanced at Taiwan, who looked both proud and terrified at the prospect. "When you're older and trained, yes. We'll need smart people like you." She beamed and went back to her drawing, satisfied. Taiwan walked Day to the door. "Thank you. I know I've said it before, but I need to keep saying it. You saved her life and didn't let me destroy everything else in the process. I owe you everything." "You participated too," Day reminded him. "You held the paradox with us. You're part of the reason it worked. I'm also the reason it was necessary." Taiwan's voice carried guilt that would probably never fully fade. "But I'm trying to make up for it. The Institute, the teaching, sharing what I know so others don't make my mistakes. That's all any of us can do. Make mistakes, learn from them, try to do better next time." Day clasped Taiwan's shoulder. "You're doing good work. Keep at it." Finally, A returned to his own quarters on Station Meridian 7, which had become something of a legend after the events that started there. Engineers throughout the sector requested transfers to the station where humans first made contact with the ethereal collective. Jiho was waiting in their shared common area, feet up on the table, watching a starball game. Hey, how'd the political stuff go? We're officially custodians of impossible spaces now. That's a terrible job title. I know, right? Day collapsed onto the couch beside his friend. But it's honest work. Jiho looked at him seriously. You sure about this? Going back into those places? Learning more impossible things? You could just stay here, do regular engineering, live a normal life. Could I, though? Day gestured at his eyes, where the faint geometric patterns glowed. I've seen behind reality's curtain. I know what's possible now. I can't just pretend the universe is simple anymore. Fair enough. Jiho returned his attention to the game. Just promise me you'll come back for the Starball finals. I've got good credits riding on the Soul Suns this year. Deal. Later, lying in his bunk and staring at the ceiling, Day thought about everything that had led him here. A simple curiosity about a sensor anomaly. A decision to follow a being of light into the unknown. A choice to hold an impossible paradox in his mind to save a life and protect the universe. His communicator chimed softly. A message from Velmara. Tomorrow, you begin your training as a custodian. You will learn to walk between dimensions, to see the mathematics that underlie reality, to guard the spaces where impossible knowledge lives. It will be difficult. It will change you further. But you have already proven capable. Then, after a pause, she added something that made him smile. Come with me, human. Into the impossible. Into the spaces where only your kind can safely walk. Come with me and help protect the galaxy from threats it cannot even perceive. Day typed back a simple response. I'm ready. He closed his eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new impossibilities to confront and solve. But that was what humans did. They looked at the impossible and said, let me try. They held contradictions in their minds and called it Tuesday. They found ways to save lives without sacrificing principles. Outside his window, the neutron star spun, its light bending in impossible ways. And Day, lying in his bunk with geometric patterns glowing faintly in his eyes, felt at peace that he had found his place in the universe. Not as a conqueror or a destroyer, but as a guardian of impossible spaces. As someone who could look at reality's deepest secrets and remain sane. As a human who chose compassion over power every single time. And tomorrow, when Velmara whispered those words again, come with me, human, he would follow. Not because he had to, but because that was what humanity did. They stepped into the unknown, held the impossible, and protected everyone along the way. That was enough. That was everything. And somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, in the Threshold Archive where ancient knowledge slept, new secrets waited for minds flexible enough to understand them without breaking. Human minds, ready to learn, ready to guard, ready to do what no one else could. The future stretched ahead, full of paradoxes and possibilities, and Day was ready to embrace every impossible moment of it.